We'll call the meeting to order of the August 9th Board of Trustees of the Urbana Free Library. At this time, I'd like for Anna to swear in Beth.
Okay, yes. Good. Beth? Oops. Yes, Anna.
Official.
Beth, do you affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Library Trustee to the best of your ability?
I do.
Thank you very much. And if you would sign that, and et cetera, et cetera. Even better.
Roll call.
Jane.
Here.
Anna. Here. Jeff.
Here.
Chris.
Yes.
Beth.
Yes.
Michael.
Here.
Bill.
Here.
Dana.
Are there any additions, corrections, or modifications to the agenda? Mark's not here, no.
We are now 11.1.
Yes. 11.1 has been removed, and I see no reason not to move item number 6 at the same time. So with those two removals, do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
The other one?
Number 6. Call for executive
yes.
session. Motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have any public comment other than our presentation? No? Okay. Then we'll call on our presentation, and I don't know who's up first.
Okay. Well, good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to work for the Urbana Free Library. I'm Paul Boland. I'm a mechanical engineer with Henneman Engineering. I brought with me one of my mechanical engineers, Nathan Alderman, with Henneman Engineering. And we were hired by through Library Director Celeste Choate to perform an equipment analysis of all the heating and cooling equipment in the building, give a condition assessment of it, and to come up with a equipment master plan that projects capital spending out into the future. And then one thing we also did was try to develop some energy-saving alternatives for the library. And one thing we did that really wasn't in our scope was to do some benchmarking to determine exactly where we fit right now with your peer libraries. And that's one thing that we often do to see what opportunities may be out there for us. So I'll let Nathan start the discussion on the condition assessment, and we'll keep this somewhat informal. If you have any questions, just raise your hand and go ahead and ask them, and we can stop, and we may develop a line of discussion then. So don't be afraid to ask any questions as they arise.
All right, thanks, Paul. So I'll start by going over the systems that are in your building already. You know that your heating is provided to the building by your boiler in the mechanical room just down the hall. That boiler is in pretty decent shape. The faceplate indicates that it's about 93% efficient, which, as listed in the report, is pretty good. The only problem with this is we spoke to the manufacturer, and parts are no longer available for this boiler. It's been discontinued by the manufacturer. So the issue with that is that if one of your parts fails, you have to completely replace the boiler. So what we'd like to recommend is that you get out ahead of that potential failure, since this boiler is quite a few years old. I believe it was installed in '72. So that would be one of our upfront recommendations for what you.
And it's a single machine. Oftentimes in a building like this, we put in 2 smaller machines. If we lose one, we'd still have one to back up that will carry us, unless we're on the very bitter cold day in the wintertime.
Celeste, is that running?
It's okay if I add anything.
Okay.
Sure.
There is another boiler in there, another $1.5 million boiler right next to it. So they do have redundancy with boilers right now.
Okay.
What, do you know what the old one, what the other one is like? Is it operating? And
It's operating. It was put in 2005, the same year as the condensing units.
so in other words, if the one that's mainly in use fails, it's not a terrible disaster where all the pipes freeze and so on.
What I've seen, because I've done maintenance here for a long time, what I've seen is, especially in the summer, you've got a reheat system, so the boiler has to run year-round, which seems a little weird, but that's America. That's the way things are designed. You can get by on one boiler, either one, the old Cleaver Brooks or the Patterson Kelly, the copper fin tube. In the winter, as long as you're not below 40 degrees, 35 degrees, you can get by with either one also. If it gets below 30, 25, and it's windy, then one won't cover it.
Right. In
That's
other words,
where you need-
you might have to close the library, but it wouldn't be a pipe freezing type
No,
of disaster.
no,
Yeah.
but you would start to lose full temperature.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So that's our analysis of the boiler. Again, the air handler unit up in the penthouse directly above us, serving the east portion, which I'll call the original portion of the building. That is original to the building. It has economizer, direct expansion, cooling coil. As we discussed earlier, heating is provided to the building through the terminal unit, so there's no heating coil in this air handling unit. This unit is in pretty good shape. The condensing units were replaced about 11 years ago, so we expect to get a significant amount of life out of those. One thing that we did notice is that
By
the
significant amount of life, can you quantify that?
that'd be about 7 to 10 years. We usually expect 20, 25 years out of those. So one thing we did notice during our investigation is that the supply fan on this unit is rattling as it operates. That indicates that it's got a bearing that's going out. So the fan will need to be replaced fairly soon, probably
Bearings.
within the bearings, excuse me. The bearings will need to be replaced within the next couple of years. That air handler is served by a pneumatic system. That system serves the original portion of the building. I'll come back to the controls later. The east half of the building, or excuse me, the west half of the building is served by the chiller up on the roof and the new air handling unit that's been installed to serve the addition. And the same as on the original portion of the building, heating is also provided through terminal units, so there's no heating coil in the air handler itself. Cooling is provided by this air-cooled chiller, which provides chilled water to the air handling unit. This unit's in very good shape. It was installed, I believe, also in 2005. And we expect to get another 10, 15 years out of it. We don't need to replace that for quite some time yet. This is served by the direct digital control, or DDC system, that's also in that penthouse. That's an electronic system as opposed to a pneumatic system. So both of the control systems throughout the building are also in very good shape. We don't, the DDC system is expected to last pretty well indefinitely with parts replacement. Parts are still available for this DDC system, so that's certainly an option. The pneumatic system is also in very good shape. We wouldn't anticipate it needed to be replaced. Certainly we would get at least 5 years out of that. And since we already have plenty of controllability that we need for energy efficiency, really the only upgrade that we get by moving to a DDC system is that both of these can be tied together into a central building automation system. So energy efficiency wouldn't really be realized in upgrading that system, but as you'll see soon, you already have a very energy efficient building. So,
The energy efficiency, you mentioned that there's this reheating business where the boilers are running. Is that not modifiable without tearing everything up?
the reason
Talk about 90.1.
The reason that we do that is for dehumidification.
Gotcha.
Because if your cooling operates 24/7, of course you're going to overcool your building. When that cooling coil shuts off, you're no
Gotcha.
longer straining water out of the air. So you start to run into humidity issues when you have full cooling but no reheatability.
But a air conditioner that's being used to dehumidify is dumping heat outside. Is there no relatively inexpensive way of just pumping?
The new energy code is ASHRAE 90.1. It doesn't allow us to simultaneously heat and cool air unless you do have some performance improvements on your chiller side, like some type of capacity control, so we don't overcool this air and then reheat it.
Right.
I believe on the chiller we already do have hot gas bypass. Is that we don't?
No, but there's crew compressors, so they have a pretty
So we
good
do have-
turnout.
we do
They
have-
do have capacity.
And so we would meet the new energy code that with the equipment that we have today. Other things that we would look at if we had a building with a lot of exhaust out of a lot of restrooms, we could recapture that exhaust air and reclaim the heat of the cooling out of this. In this building, we don't really have a significant amount of exhaust. It would probably be a good payback to do that. We could take a look at that, but one thing we typically do is do a life cycle cost analysis, and frankly, it's a little bit hard on HVAC projects to get something that has less than what you'd want to see is an investment grade improvement. You'd want to see something with less than a 5-year payback.
Well, less than 5 years.
Well,
That's,
that's,
I was thinking in terms of, and I don't know really anything detailed about the budget, that bonds and so on are typically around 5% now, which would mean a lot longer than.
well, that's true. The other part of it is it'd be a pretty significant capital investment. I know you've got competing interests for capital here for different programs for the library and other building needs. So we could take a look at it and come up with a raw cost on what it might take, but that would probably be the best way, but we just don't have probably enough exhaust to really make it a viable
Oh, no,
option.
yeah, the particular exhaust thing isn't necessary, but just in general, it'd be nice to know if there are things that have 10 or 15-year payback.
Sure.
Even though we might not be able to do them, it would be nice to know they exist because we should do them.
Okay.
You know.
I've got a question about the DDC systems. So it looks like the DDC system we have is Invensys, and does Invensys still exist? Because I know there's just
yeah.
so much, so that if we were actually going to replace the pneumatic control system with the DDC, then we'd get the same vendor?
That would probably be that would be a very good option to do it. My belief on control systems is we ought to select at least 2 manufacturers and probably bid it out. Just
Okay.
for, I think
And so they wouldn't see any compatibility problems in actually trying to combine them?
they all communicate. About 15 years ago, our industry got to a standard communications protocol.
Whoa.
It's pretty standard.
All right, so I'd be amazed, right?
There's still many,
Right.
but it's called BACnet, and that's the communication language they all speak together with. But we have done very large hospitals that were all on Johnson controls, and
Right.
now we have Siemens involved in
Right.
that same hospital. So it takes a little bit of research, and you've got to get both parties to the table. Some like to have some proprietary things they don't share with the other, but it can be done. But Invensys is a very good company. They've got very good local support. They're highly regarded at the university. They'd be a good choice. But I think it's always good to get competitive proposals on things.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about the building systems?
Well,
You said on the boiler, though, it sounded like the main problem or your concern was the availability of parts.
Right.
So is this like, I'm sorry, I've gone through several air conditioners and boilers and things, and somehow miraculously they find parts. I mean, are they not available in other places besides from the manufacturer?
They would be available in other places besides the manufacturer, but the issue is that those other places can't guarantee a timely delivery.
Right.
So if a part goes down, you could have the boiler down for an extended period of time while that part's being delivered. We just did a big master facility study for Champaign County, and they have VAV box controllers that are no longer supported. You can still find them off eBay or so places like that. But that's not a way to master plan to run a whole library.
Right.
So yeah, they're available. Do you have any input on that, Dan? But we did speak to the boiler OEM, and they said we don't support those machines anymore. So I don't
It just
know.
seems like a boiler is such a big, heavy thing, and I don't know what the price is, but it would seem like 90% of it is the boiler, which is, seems like it never dies, or they don't die easily, but it's the other stuff that...
Right.
what would be the comparative cost of, say, one of the new boilers where you recommended there be 2, and buying a big bag of spare parts ahead of time, just knowing roughly which ones, not roughly, knowing which ones are
That's a
most...
reasonable strategy, I think. Why don't you talk about the costing that we put together on the 2 new machines?
Okay, so the cost that we put together for the installation of 2 new boilers to serve your building, again, we want to keep the 2 boiler installation to give you some fallback in case one of your boilers fails. In this, we provided a 15% markup, but a bottom estimate of about $93,000. So for that amount, that gives you 2 brand new boilers in there. You don't have to stock parts for that. You don't have to have a big shelf with all your parts sitting on it. That's just 2 fresh boilers that will be supported by the manufacturer. So you can get those parts in a timely manner.
Is there room, since the problem isn't really that there's anything wrong with the thing now, but just trying to avoid a emergency,
That's correct.
is there room for a third boiler? That is one of these 2 units, so it could be sitting there and just switched in if, it's hard to see, if we have 2 that are operating now, it seems hard to justify paying for 2 new ones if there's a way around it.
We didn't look at that. We can. If you've got a big building, I would expect there's certainly room to put one of these in somewhere. It may mean that we're going to take a little bit of a corner of a room here and expand it into a mechanical room. The key thing would be access to an exterior wall so we can get our outside air and flue in. But
Right.
I would anticipate that we can find some place to put a third machine in.
If this building were expanded 1/3, would 2 boilers handle it?
Typically, we would not size, if that's in the master plan to put a big addition on, absolutely, we'd size them at that point now. Not knowing, if we, and it's simple to do that, if you know about what the master plan projects, that would make sense to do that at this point. The reality is, on a project like this, the installation, the purchase of the machine is about 50-60% of the cost, and the labor is about 50%. So the labor doesn't go up significantly if we go up 1 or 2 sizes of boiler. Maybe we go from some 4-inch pipe to some 6 or something like that.
And what's the projected lifespan of boilers manufactured today?
We ought to get 20, 25 years out of them.
I think that would be my concern. That boiler does work, and some of the parts are available, but it's so past its useful life expectancy, it could fail catastrophically any day. The tubes could fail. I think it's going to be well worth considering replacing it, even though it does still work, and I'm old and I like to see old things keep working. I think it's really time to proactively think about replacing it. And if you take that boiler out, there's plenty of room to put 2 boilers in place of it.
Oh,
That
they're
condense what
much
you're
more
talking
efficient
about.
today?
Right.
Yes.
They're smaller and more efficient
Oh, yeah.
today?
Yeah.
Okay. Because that would answer the question about if we were adding to the building too, wouldn't it?
I think in 2005, when they did the addition, they put provisions in that boiler room to add another boiler next to the copper fin tube boiler. So I don't think there's any concern about getting another boiler in there, but I really think it's time to get that other boiler out of there, the Cleveland Brooks.
Sounds pretty.
I mean, to me, it's really a risk management conversation we're having here.
Yeah. And how much of a gambler do we want to be?
Boilers, in today's marketplace, nobody keeps anything on the shelf. Typically it's 4 to 6 weeks, but we checked today on lead time on these boilers, and as of today, the lead time is,
Well, they told me that they can have the boiler itself on a truck in 2 days. However, the problem is the flue itself.
Yeah.
They need to fabricate the flue. He told me that would take about 2 to 4 weeks to arrive on site. So I think a good conservative estimate for lead time would be about 4 weeks.
now that's today, if it's January 15th,
Right.
It might be a different story.
Right. Okay. So we had a look at how your building is performing energy-wise.
Let's talk about the archives next, right?
Oh, I can talk about the archives. We're on to do rather.
Let's go, you're right, let's go to this.
Okay, so we had a look at how your building is performing in terms of energy. We had copies of your power and gas bills for the past 2 years, for the 2013-2014 fiscal year, and then again for 14-15. So we totaled up all the energy that you used in those years, divided by the square footage of your building, and that gives us our energy use intensity, or EUI. Now these, we have some reported median values from Energy Star. For what you would typically expect to see from a library is 235.6 kBTU per square foot. That's 235,600 BTUs per square foot of building area. What we found by your gas bills was that in the 13-14 fiscal year you used 172, and in 14-15 you used 163. So you're significantly below the median energy consumption for a building of this type, size, and expected use. So you're already performing quite admirably in terms of energy efficiency. You may notice we had a question earlier about the source EUI and the site EUI listed here. The source EUI is based on your total meter readings. That's all the kilowatts and all the therms that your building uses. That's for HVAC loads as well as lighting, water heating, any plug loads, things like that. The site EUI is only considering your HVAC use. So that's the difference between these two numbers. We do our comparisons for building use by the source EUI. So this graph here shows some typical expected EUIs based on building types. I've drawn in this line that shows where we're standing right now based on these 2 years. And you can see that you're right about the same level as a courthouse, so that's fairly good use for a library.
Courthouse is a similar building type. It would have a lot of public traffic in and out, a lot of door openings, and your energy use is usually driven by the amount of outside air you allow to come into the building.
Right. So since the boiler faceplate shows it's operating at 93%, these modular condensing boilers can go up to 96%. I had a look at your gas bills, and if we do that reduction for the increase in boiler efficiency, that yields a payback longer than the expected life of the boiler. So we wouldn't recommend that the boiler be upgraded solely on the basis of energy efficiency. However, given the parts replacement issue that we've already discussed, that's why we would recommend this boiler replacement be pursued.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
I don't think that nameplate is right. That boiler can't be 93% efficient. It's not.
It's an atmospheric machine.
It's atmospheric. It's 78 at the most. There's something's not right.
We got the data right off the tag.
Yeah, but
If it's an atmospheric boiler,
I'm just saying.
the best that it can do is 83%.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
it's
thermodynamically, that's the best it can do. The new boilers are modular condensing boilers, means that exhaust gas streams, the burned gas, you wring out every bit of heat of it and you condense out the moisture that's in the combustion products.
the reason I think this is important is I know you're trying to decide what you're gaining by getting rid of the boiler, and efficiency. I think you're going to gain a lot of efficiency, even though the nameplate doesn't show it. I can just tell you that boiler is not 93% efficient. Somebody marked the tag wrong or something. It'll melt your hand if you put.
Well, I'll take that 78% number back. I'll rerun that analysis.
But order of magnitude, we based our
93.
$800 a year on a 3 or 4% efficiency improvement.
Right.
And now we'll go from 83 to 96, so it'll go up 13%. So it'll be 3 times that amount. It'll be $2,400, $3,000 a year in gas savings.
Right, I think it could be substantial, especially if they adjust their automation system to have a lower water temperature.
To do a hot water
That's,
reset.
I mean, that's where the efficiency is, to get the return water temperature lower too. So I think the high efficiency boilers with a little bit of change in the reset and the control system, even though they're already pretty efficient, I think they could even be more, especially in the summer when you're reheating. We could get by with lower water temperatures, lower utilities. Sorry,
No, that's all right.
you can tell me to shut up.
Really,
No,
really
this is
good.
why you're here,
Yeah.
yes.
Fantastic.
Dan Hoke, he's a senior engineer with Davis House Mechanical here in Champaign.
How does the humidity play into this?
Your dehumidification loads are generally handled by your cooling coils, and that is definitely factored into here. So these numbers are all the energy that you used in the building for those years. You do have active dehumidification in your cooling coils and reheat, as we discussed earlier. So we wouldn't, I mean, if we added equipment, then certainly we would be bringing that up, but I don't think we need to. I think your dehumidification is already doing fine. I'll get to that in a little bit in the analysis of the archive storage, but
In the wintertime, we don't have any humidification. We get what Mother Nature gives us.
right. Any other questions on energy use? All right.
Well, did you notice anything in the building? Well, one of the questions we're wondering about is we have these huge windows, single pane, drafty. Do you have a feel for roughly what percent of the HVAC energy use we could save if we converted those to double pane with good seals? Typically, just from, obviously not a formal thing, but just from past
You can go
experience.
back and rerun a load count, just model it, but I would say maybe 10%.
Oh,
But you're talking about all the buildings, or all the windows?
there's like 12, there's 12 enormous leaky single pane.
Do you sense a lot of infiltration, outside air infiltration?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So maybe 10%?
No more than 10%.
No, but probably 5%?
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, no, then it's good. Then we can,
Are they historic windows?
Yes.
yeah, but I found a place that does acrylic second layers in a way that's consistent with historic stuff and costs only half as much as new windows.
It's not an interior storm window, is it?
It's not a storm window. It's a sort of laser fit acrylic second.
A lot of
pane.
good manufacturers, but it probably, if you look at these improvements on their own merit, it probably wouldn't have a very significant payback. But there's other reasons, that would be qualitative reasons that we want to do that. It's occupant comfort, employee comfort. That somebody's, I think it was up in the archives there. She has a very drafty area, doesn't she?
I think Dawn does. In circulation.
Circulation, I'm sorry.
That's one of the historic windows.
Okay, so there'd be other reasons other than just economic reasons to do it.
Okay, but it sounds like there could be a couple thousand a year savings or so, maybe.
Well, don't write any of this down, but
No,
we
we're not.
can, I don't want to make any snap judgments on it. We can go back and just do a block load on it and compare a window with one emissivity factor and one level of infiltration versus another one, then we'll know for sure.
Okay,
But
just wanted to get a rough idea.
It's very difficult to get window replacements to pay for themselves with energy on their own.
Okay,
If you're judging it with the same financial
Gotcha.
metrics that you do other improvements. But there's other reasons to do them. You've got to have good windows without draftiness in the building.
All right. So in the archive storage area, your archive storage area is currently served partly by each air handling unit. We've got the east half served by the east air handling unit and the west by the west. The problem with this is that when these units go into night setback, then the air conditioning in this area is no longer very precisely controlled. We lose a lot of air to the space. We can't dehumidify. We can't maintain the required temperatures. So what we would recommend be done is a dedicated air handling unit to just the archive storage area. And this unit, we've given them a preliminary selection for sizing, what kind of loads we would have in the area. But this unit would be dedicated to the area to maintain a very precise temperature and humidity set point. In order to do that, it would need to have a humidifier inside that. That can be a little infrared humidifier. It's just a pan with a light that heats up water and evaporates it into the airstream. But with that, you can maintain a pretty tight band of what your required set point needs to be. I wrote it in the report. I believe it was mid 70 degrees and about 40% relative humidity. That really can't be maintained very consistently by the way that we've got the air handler set up now.
And with the windows we have, we really won't be able to hold much more than 30% humidity in there. When we go above that, we're going to see condensation and frosting on those windows in the wintertime. Once you'd upgrade windows, we could raise that up to 40%.
gotcha. So just a good double pane window and you
Right.
could, yeah.
You'd want a U factor of 0.3. That's what you're required to have for Energy Star.
So we'd recommend that this unit be installed in the southeast corner of the archive storage. I took a quick look at a preliminary selection for this unit. What I found was a vertical standing unit from Liebert. Would take up about a 5'9" square footprint, including the required clearances around it. So this area here should be plenty wide. If you wall off part of it to be dedicated for that unit, should be plenty wide to house it. We had some concerns about noise. This unit wouldn't really be any louder than a regular residential furnace. And of course, that would be a factor in the ductwork routing design. We would make sure to check the noise levels, make sure that it won't be too intrusive to your occupants. But we really wouldn't expect it to be that big of an issue.
And then where would you be venting that Liebert? And where's,
The cooling would be provided by a DX condensing unit up on the roof.
okay, that's right, you said that on the roof, okay. Because I'm just trying to think if it's in the room and therefore where the drainage for the Liebert itself is going.
Right. The You're talking about the condensation
Yeah.
off the cooling coil? Yeah, there would have to be a floor drain added or some.
Okay, yeah, because I'm thinking, because usually you need a drain, or you are able to run a pipe outside the building, which is still a drain,
We
just,
have a funnel drain there, and preferably taking gravity down through the floor below and try to find a sanitary riser. If that didn't exist, we'd have to put a little pan there and a condensate pump. That'd be my last choice.
okay. And just because if there's not enough drainage, and then, well, there's humidity problems in the archives anyhow, but just when you have possibility of leaking water and everything, and
This would allow us to decouple this from any building system, so it would run on its own zone.
Right.
And we could still achieve night setback for both systems, and this would run steady state. In archives, what American Association of Archives will tell you, it's not so much that you zero in on those precise temperature ranges and humidity. What's very destructive is the changes. We do a lot of historic preservation work throughout the nation, actually, but woodwork and oil paintings, that's really the most harm is when you have rapid departures from 30% relative humidity up to 50, and then in wintertime down to 10, and also on the temperature, that expansion contraction of canvas and wood and paper in this case, that's really what's the most destructive. This will allow us to keep that steady state throughout the day.
Is that primarily temperature is the
It's
issue?
humidity.
it's humidity.
It's humidity as well, okay.
Right. So this, because of the nature of what you're storing in there, we'd recommend that this be done on a faster timeline than everything else. We would put this on our 1 to 2 year plan. We presented a couple of costs in here. We would estimate just a preliminary estimate of cost about 45 to 65,000. And that's including the
The thing we have to be careful on old masonry buildings like this is a vapor barrier. We don't have one in that masonry wall, and there's really no way to get one in it. So we don't want to run the humidity levels up too high, because in the wintertime, that humidity will go right through that wall. It'll hit dew point, and we've got moisture inside stone, and it can lead to some bad consequences.
So you don't think 7 tons is too much? I mean, just the calculations, because then you have the opposite problem where if it overcools, then, I'm just trying to work out things in my head right here and saying, okay, look at that square footage, because 5 ton versus a 7 ton.
Right. We also need to provide capacity control for this unit because, of course, that 7 ton is the maximum load in the space, and
Right.
in the spring months, you're not always going to be using that much.
We just chose this to
Okay,
draw a
just-
sense
okay.
around the cost. But I will tell you, oversizing a unit like this on the refrigerant side is almost far worse than undersizing it.
Right.
Because in the summertime, it will come on, it will drop
Right.
the air down to 72, and it will always be cool in there, but it'll be clammy and humid.
But, yeah.
And that's very deleterious to an archival storage area.
Right.
There's really no good way to fix that.
No, and that's why this guy said 7 ton, well, it looks big, but,
It might be, we're
Yeah.
just, we just did a block load calculation, so if we go through with the design on this, we'll have to go in and look what window package we have installed now and then what we might install for the future, because if the windows come a few years down the road in the budget process, this still has to work for the first few years.
Sure.
So what we design now on the cooling side might be larger capacity. We've got to make certain we've got enough capacity control. We put in the better windows that can work in the summertime. Windows with better shading coefficients and things of that nature, less infiltration.
sure, makes sense, no, thanks.
Right.
May I ask you a question? Sure. I just noticed, just from your display, in the room that's missing on that display is the actual
Right.
compact shelving storage area. So are you recommending that this change or this new environment would be for both this area plus that
Right.
storage area?
Right.
Okay.
Right, it would include the entire archive storage area. You have your high density storage in the back.
Right.
You've got these shelves shown back here behind your desk.
Right.
And then also it would serve, there's that office just to the right of the desk, it would serve that as well.
This may be a dumb question, but when you said that over capacity system as it switches on can make big problems, are these not the ones? Well, they call them linear inverters or something. They're these devices that don't just switch on or off, can run
Well,
it.
the air handling unit would run continuously. We always want to be moving air throughout the system, but the compressor would modulate on and off. Now, they've got newer compressors that They have much better capacity control on those with the variable speed drives.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah.
Yes, it would be.
Oh, it would be, okay, so, yeah.
Right.
Oh, so capacity control is the same thing as,
Yes, sir.
as what I was saying, yeah.
One thing that just happened about 2 weeks ago with some level of, it's not a budget, it's a spending plan in Springfield, but DCEO has been funded to some level for their Act on Energy grants. Now, there's been a year of applications lined up down there. But right now, they do have money, and no one can tell you whether things will be funded. We've got very good relations with those folks, and there is money now. That I know that there was concerns that the governor would take that money and sweep it into to fund social services. That didn't happen. So there is money available now from both ComEd and Ameren. We'd be on the Ameren program. So that can help on the replacement of the boiler. It can also help on probably on our first, what we perceive as our most pressing needs are the boiler, and then doing something to preserve the archives.
Okay, that's good to know.
And with the boiler and the archives issue, what's the total bottom line for those two costs?
Let's see here. Said about 45 to 65,000 for the archive storage air handling unit, and the boiler about 93,000. So yeah, about
160,000.
160.
140 to 160,000. Now, what our process would be, we would go through. These are not terribly complex design issues. We come through and we create a schematic design to just show where things are going to go, what size they would be, and we would give you a cost estimate that's probably within plus or minus 15%. And as we move through the design, we get that tightened down. But I think the numbers he gave are pretty good budgetary numbers at this point.
And you would provide us vendors to make it.
Typically what the process is, we would create biddable plans and specifications. That would be a drawing that shows where the machine goes, the piping connections, all the controls, and a specification manual that tells the contractor how he has to perform his work in the business side, when he's going to get paid, how he submits his pay applications. The most important part is what type of bonds and insurance he has to protect the commission or to protect the library. And then we would also have technical specifications that would tell him precisely. We look at least 3 boilers, maybe more if there are 3 equivalent, which 3 boilers we believe are as commercially equivalent as possible, and how he's to do all his wiring, any piping, what type of connections he's to use, how he's to weld up pipe if we have a welded pipe, and then how he's to close out the job. Oftentimes, our institute, we get done, we throw the keys on the table and we say, it's yours, good luck. That doesn't work. We would include some level of training. We would tell them here that, and you've got to quantify what you expect out of the training. We would have a list, and this is pretty simple. We'd have a list of 4 or 5 items that we want to make certain that your maintenance people have mastery of, and then we would tell them that we expect that would take 2 sessions of 4 hours apiece, because sometimes these training sessions boil down into, we bring in the O&M manuals and we go through those for 10 minutes, and they spend the next 30 minutes talking about the Cardinals and the Cubs. So we quantify exactly what results we expect out of those training sessions.
What's the standard warranty period these days?
It can be whatever you want. Typically, a boiler would be, they do different things. You'll have the boiler might typically be 1 year, but certain components on the boiler, the heat exchanger might give a 5-year warranty. Is that?
Sometimes longer on the
Yeah. So, we've got to be careful too on our warranty. In our spec book, we don't just want to say a 1-year warranty, because we could be giving away things that Cleaver Brooks or whoever it is, if they say the boiler itself is 1 year, but the heat exchanger is 5 years or the burner's 5 years. So you can buy longer packages if you want. We've got good contractors here in town. I don't know, we we've got these boilers pretty well defined. We know which the good ones are, and we wouldn't specify anything but. So, extended warranties, when we get to that point, we can have that discussion as to what that cost would be. One good way to determine that is just put it in as an alternate bid. See on our boiler, if we want a 5-year extended warranty, parts and labor, what's the cost for that? And they'll tell us it's whatever it is. And then we can make a decision at that point whether you think it's a viable thing to do.
Makes sense. Thanks.
As far as what we have now, we have a fixed cost, like it's maintenance contract or something. What do we have on it now? We pay something every month for a maintenance agreement, is that right?
Time and materials. Is it?
Yeah. I mean, there are annual costs that happen, there's always annual maintenance to it.
So when we
but
see a bill from Davis Hook, it's just something happened that you need to come in. So we have no.
It's either annual maintenance or if something had happened.
He probably at the beginning of the season, boiler tune-up.
There's a quarterly inspection, so there'd be a major heat inspection in the fall for the boilers, the air handlers, and then mid-season in the winter, there's just an air handler maintenance for the filters because they need to be quarterly.
But there's no repair contract or anything like
No,
that?
no, it's just time and material as needed.
And then for the DCEO, the Acton Energy thing, funding you were talking about, is that different than what we applied for through DCEO? They had some kind of a grant.
No, same program. Sure.
Same program, okay. So would you handle that for us then? And
Sure, it's a
just,
2-page application.
Okay.
Then we need to get some signatures, but
Yeah.
we can handle that. Now, I would suggest that what they're doing, or what somebody's doing on mid-season tune-ups, that's a big reason why we're here and not up here on our energy consumption.
Makes sense.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry to be focusing on the boiler here. So we have 2 boilers now.
Right.
One of them, it's low, its efficiency bad, you can't get parts, it should be replaced, and everybody agrees. The other one, do we use that, or is that just a,
They work in conjunction with.
they do run though?
Yes.
Okay, so what you're proposing is 2 new boilers to replace both of those?
That was in our suggestion, but
Right.
I think one of the gentlemen suggested, could you put in a 3rd new one and use that in conjunction with these 2 older ones, and that's an option too.
Well, this is my other question though. When we have no idea, but if we were to add to the building, you said that you could upsize these boilers in.
Yeah, the beauty of modular condensing boilers is we've done plants where we've had as many as 10 of them, big hospitals, and you just, when you have an addition, you bring in 2 more, and they sit right in
So
line.
that would be a more feasible solution than
just
upsizing
spend-
one of your boilers
you
for
just-
potential future
Yeah, we
use?
can take a look at it, but you just spend the money then precisely when you need it.
Well, as long as we're daydreaming about an imaginary future with money, why would we do these type of systems at all if we're doing any major changes? When it seems like geothermal basically gets you about a factor of 2 in efficiency, and
Well,
if we're doing a big,
right.
big,
I would say this about geothermal. We have done a lot of geothermal here in Champaign. We did Windsor West, the big apartment complex out of the I-57 and Staley Road. We've worked pretty hard on doing studies like this for the university, and we just can't get them to bite on some of these small buildings out in the research park. They just have a bias against it. The reality, and whenever we do these, we do a life cycle cost analysis. We don't make a snap decision or presumptuous that it's the way to go. One thing you'll see now is natural gas is plentiful and it's cheap. And if you look at the DOE projections for natural gas, they predict that it'll be $3 a million on out for 20 years. That's their crystal ball, and that's the best that exists. If we were doing this discussion 7 years ago, gas would have been $10 a million and going up. It peaked out at 12. So the long-term forecast for natural gas by the best minds in the business says it's plentiful, it's going to be flat for 20 years. Electricity, we know it's going to go up 30%. So the decisions by which a lot of these geothermal systems were put in were good decisions at the time, but the economics of that are changing. So as I said, I wouldn't prejudge that yet. Make certain that it's that it's the viable way to go. It was back when gas was $3 a million, but maybe not now.
If you just had to make a total ballpark guess, well, obviously in your case it'd be more than a guess, but for a building of this size, if you were to put in a whole new system, conventional versus whole new system, geothermal, what's the difference in price? Roughly.
How many square feet do we have here?
This, I measured up about 50,000. Is that
Okay.
right?
Yeah, so say 400 square foot a ton, so that'd be 50,000 divided by 400, would be 100. Well, what's the sum of this chiller and the 2 condensing units? 150 ton?
Oh, those 2 condensing units are 40. The chiller, I
80.
can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's about
130 total.
130.
No, 130 is what the chiller is.
So we have about
200
200 tons. To do that in central Illinois, we need a well on 20-foot centers, about 140 to 300 foot deep. We'd want to see where we would put that, if we have any green space here.
We don't have.
1 ton per hole?
Yeah, ton.
You have to-
The deeper you go, the more you get, but you reach a point there where your drilling cost, you cross that threshold line. We could go in the south parking lot, but it's all been repaved, and it would destroy it, would be repaving the whole thing. So what would it cost if we had a greenfield site out here? And we put them in parking lots before. I would bet it would probably be 30-40% more than a conventional condensing boiler, air-cooled chiller system.
So the conventional, sort of all new for this would be, say, 600,000-ish, and it might be another 200,000 on top of that, something like that.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be more, and as important as what that economic savings are in the future, it's not what it would have been 10 years ago.
Got it. But the upfront is 200,000, $250,000, that type of
That
ballpark.
it would be. Do you have a feel for that?
I won't do the pricing side of that.
Okay,
Sorry.
but that's-
But what we do is, we don't make a decision to put in geothermal because everybody else is doing it. We do a full life cycle cost, and we look at the costs and the savings of one system compared to another over the life of that system, which might be 25 years. So we compare ground source geothermal to a conventional condensing boiler, air-cooled chiller system. And then we'd look at all the costs, the first cost of your capital to purchase and install those systems, the maintenance cost over the life of those systems, and the energy, and then any capital we can reclaim at the end of it. The well field's not shot in 25 years.
Right.
It will last 50 or indefinitely, so we put a capital recovery factor on that.
Right.
And then we'd look at what the net present value is of both of those systems.
Gotcha.
And net present cost. And we make an economic decision, but that's really just one part of it. That's the quantitative valuation of it. Then we look at the qualitative. Is the geothermal system easier for to maintain with your own people you have in place? Maybe. Does it provide better heat? If we have any hot water fin tube here around these if we're going to leave old drafty windows, it's probably not a good system because we can't generate the hot water temperatures to put into perimeter radiation on it. So we look at all that, and then we sit down with your board and we make a group decision. The other thing is, as I mentioned earlier, you've got competing factions for your scarce tax revenue here. There's program demands and then building demands, so that's something the board has to set the priorities for.
And those gas price estimates assume that we'll continue to dump CO2 for free?
The DOE rates do. That's that's such a deep dive into something. I wouldn't want to make a recommendation based
Right,
upon.
but I just want to make sure that that's what those.
Yeah. There is a carbon
Projections
tax
are
that
based.
the current administration is considering, and if the next administration, or we can't look at what happens in the fall. We've got to look out 20 years from now. There could be 5 different presidents by then, or there could at least 2.5. So there will be some move to put a tax on carbon. So,
There could be 5 different presidents, but there's only going to be one atmosphere.
that's right. So,
Okay, so that's the information.
any other questions? If you have anything,
That's good.
Celeste has our contact information. You can just email it to us. We'd be happy to present anything. But in summary, I think what was installed were good system selections for the time. They've been very well maintained, and that shows up in the fact here that we're well under the mean for your peer institutions. And then it's just a matter of, we do advocate doing something to this just so we don't have a service interruption. And then we're forced into something, and sometimes haste makes waste. We could have to be forced into some bad decisions because we can't get one of the 2 or 3 machines we want because they're not available. And then I think, we really can't undo any of the damage that humidity and improper environment have done to these archives. So we would advocate that this has a high priority as well. We've got some time on the rest of it.
Can I add something?
Sure.
That's the best news we've
Part of
had.
the DDC system isn't working right now, and it may not be apparent just from going through, but I think that's something that really needs to be considered.
Which one is the DDC?
The direct digital controls for the
Oh,
building.
okay.
So that's the Invencis system, the Alpha system. The past couple of years, there's been a couple of failures of controls, and Alpha has said that the system that's here is outdated and they're wanting to do an upgrade. They've talked about that, right? So as far as the efficiency right now, the building's not working as efficiently as it really could because there's not proper control. Now, it doesn't affect the day-to-day operation because when you're here, everything's fine, but it does affect the night operation. Eventually, that part's going to stop completely, and I think it needs to be worked in here. I mean, we're talking about priorities, and I think that kind of has to fit in there somewhere. I love the idea of the boiler. I think the boiler needs to be replaced. And if the sky's the limit, if money is no object, I even think you might think about the newer boiler, getting rid of it too, and getting 3 condensing boilers, because that Patterson-Kelly boiler is, what would it be, 12 years, 11 and a half, 12 years old. It's not the most efficient for this application. It's not the best for the application, but these condensing boilers that they're talking about are. So you may only have 5 more years out of that boiler that's here, and it's not working the best it could. So I'm throwing that out there, not trying to complicate it. I'm just throwing ideas out there. But the control system is going to have to be looked at, and probably pretty soon, if you want to stay as efficient as it is and stay under control. And that's not, like you talked about changing from pneumatics to DDC. The pneumatics maybe aren't the best, but most of the pneumatics are controlled by DDC. And the end component is pneumatic on some of them. But the head-end unit right now has had a couple of failures. And I think, is that right, Celeste, that Alpha says that it would have to be upgraded to a new head-end unit?
They wanted to, that was the $17,000 bill we had brought to you earlier in the year, but we thought it would be better to look at that within the context of the whole package.
Is that included in here, though? Because I want to...
No, it's not.
I just want to make sure, because that is kind of a concern. That's kind of an immediate concern, I think, that may not be addressed in even the pneumatic to DDC.
And what is that?
The main DDC system right now, like the main CPU,
Yeah, it's a
has
controller
a couple
itself.
of things inside it that's just not working right. And Alpha Controls has done a good job doing workarounds, but when they do the workarounds, you lose functionality. And one of these times, some of the functionality is going to go away, and they're not going to be able to do it anymore. So I think it's just a matter of time where that's going to have to be upgraded.
But there's different approaches to that as well, getting different pieces of equipment versus just upgrading the software in the box. There was more things that could be done.
Right, because they brought up that, well, the main processor is outdated, they don't use that technology anymore, so it needs to be upgraded. The boxes, all the variable air volume boxes have controls that need to be upgraded, so.
I think what we can do on that, we'll take a look at their proposal and kind of succinctly summarize what their proposal is and what our recommendation is. But you're right, although they are a DDC system, they don't last forever. We lose some functionality. Then we've got a similar situation here with the boiler. So we'll take a supplemental look at that.
Obsolescence, isn't
Is
it?
there a used market for 10-year-old boilers or trade-ins or anything?
What's that?
Is there a used market for 10-year-old boilers?
I've got a class I teach down in Savoy. I'd love to have it for the class. That's a really good use, right? There's really no value to it.
I just had one other question. Is there any problem with replacing the boiler that we've got that really needs to be replaced with a new boiler now or in the near future, then a year later replace the second boiler?
No.
I'm staging the purchase.
Yeah, we want to make certain that we get it installed in the very simple stuff so we can get this piece in and then it
But if we had
allows.
to stage the purchase just because of financial reasons, that's not the end of the world. Okay.
That's the great thing about the modular that you were talking about.
Any other questions? Well, I think, appreciate your time and the ability to work for you. We'll take a little deeper look into this controls, and that may be a third thing that needs some attention as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Overwhelming, but very interesting.
Celeste, I have forgotten, I've asked next door here, what was the figure the city gave us?
$125,000 this fiscal year.
So 138 is over that. The archives and the boilers.
Right,
But that was 2 boilers, too, wasn't it?
if they took out the one single old 1970s boiler, they would want the 2 boilers to replace the one. So we would want the 2.
Can I ask you a real quick question here? So Celeste, she says that if you took out the one boiler, you'd want to put 2 in to replace it, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you couldn't put in one boiler to replace that one and stage the second boiler at some later date?
If we made that first boiler larger, we could.
Okay. And the cost of making that larger is not disproportionate, and the installation is not going to...
It would not be double, no, sir.
Right, okay.
Making your installation cost stays relatively the same. Your price of the machine goes up some.
Right. Okay.
But those are the type of things we expose fully during design development, our very first stage. After we've done about 15% of the design, we would have a little layout in the mechanical room just to prove that it fits. And then we'd show what machine we've had, and we'd come up with a budgetary estimate where we've got those things defined.
So if you put in 2 units, would you then get rid of the second unit that we already had? You wouldn't need it?
Wouldn't need it, but unless there's it would serve as a full backup in case. So if we lost one of those 2 units, we can still run unimpeded.
But you're losing a new one.
Right.
If you do that.
And we just want to make certain that by installing these first 2, we don't do anything to hem ourselves in or create additional cost to demo out that third machine when we expand.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
That's yours.
Let's table this discussion for a little while and move on to some other items. Consent agenda. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda? Which would include the expenditures of minutes of the board meeting, bills for July 13th, 20, 27, and payroll for August 5. Second?
Second?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, we can move back. Do you have questions or comments that you want to make about what we've just heard? I personally like Jeff's idea that if you could replace, for timing, 1 at this time rather than the 2.
That's why it was so confusing, because I thought he was talking about 1 unit, but he's basically saying 2 units, so...
Well, he's talking about smaller units. That,
Yeah, talking about a modular
modular
approach
units,
to it.
yeah. So
But then what I'm also hearing is the digital control system, you'd have to have that up front at the beginning. And if those are done well, you shouldn't need a new digital control system for each boiler. They should just all actually be able to be hooked together. But the other thing I was hearing is, I mean, this was kind of it was both a higher level overview, but yet with detailed cost estimates. But yet as we were kind of talking through some of these things, you're hearing the hidden costs, like when they said Liebert unit. Well, okay, well, putting a drain, I can't tell whether that was part of the estimate or not part of an estimate, because there's decisions that have to be made. And so, I mean, these are just good things. It's just a normal thing. So as we make our decisions, then, we just have to keep in mind these are estimates. And then as we ask for a particular solution or we get the bid marks, the numbers are going to move around. And so I think it's just something.
Rather than,
They're going to move, and sometimes they say, oh, look, this is easier than I thought, and other times they say, oh, gosh, it's just really going to be hard to find a place to put a drain in here. I'm just using that as an...
He was stating that he thought that the humidity, the archives was really as high a priority. Did you get that? As high a priority as the boiler was? Is that where you came from?
That's what he was saying.
So we can't separate those probably. We have to consider the boiler and the archives.
Yeah, I think we should shoot for replacing the boiler and the archives, or doing both of that. And then encouraged to hear that the main chiller and air handler seem like they'll last for a while.
That was great.
Yeah.
A
That's
couple
good.
5 years, that's great.
Yeah, so we're probably looking at 200 ballpark figure, right? But they'll figure out more once they look at the controls closer. But I think if we could steer them in that direction and say, yeah, we want to do the boiler and the archives, that's probably about all we need right now, right?
That's what it sounded like. And again, depending on the control situation.
And then we'll work on finding funding.
Well, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I was just, in terms of just the plans for the archives, and I mean, I would want to reread their recommendations, but also kind of review some of my own, literature on my shelf. But the idea that you would install a system that would maintain that temperature and humidity in all of those areas, including the public areas, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, when I...
you don't believe it's possible, or
No,
you
it's not, I mean, most archives I've worked in, material, if you bring material from the climate control area, especially since the fluctuations aren't so big, so from 70 and 40, then you bring them out to a reading room for someone to look at for an hour or two. That's not enough time for that change in humidity and temperature to actually affect the paper. You probably would have to sit in that different new climate for like 24 hours, 48 hours, which is one reason why when you go into archives, often the public area has, still it's not 80 degrees. There's obviously an HVAC system and it's maintained, but it's the storage area where the material sits 90% of the time that's maintained. So I probably would be interested in seeing.
What if they just did the storage?
Right.
Oh, that's a great
Is our storage
idea.
all in one place?
Well, we have two storage areas.
Yeah.
Over half of our collection now sits in the Tepper building.
I
That's
guess,
what
I mean,
thought.
having them do the whole archives would give us more flexibility if we wanted to rearrange that space and use more of it for storage.
Down the road for archives,
Down the road.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Which is why I think it came up, what is the master plan and where will this fit in the future? And whether if you do install something, if then the area is expanded, how can you then expand its functionality like he talked about out here, there. So if something like that is possible, but like I said, for the area that is, outdoors, it would just change. Not that that is a huge issue, but, you know, like the doors to the archives now are not completely open, but they're partially open, because we want to be open, we want people to feel like they can walk in the door. Well, if you're going to be creating a micro climate in there, you're not going to want to keep those doors open.
No, you're not.
Which is not a huge deal. But again, I think I probably, and he's worked in archives before in museums, so, and sometimes, you know, archives are set up separately where they don't actually have that much public service area necessarily, or the public service area is actually used for archives. So when he was pointing to the shelves, those are books and journals. Those are bound. I'm not saying they shouldn't be maintained, but, you know,
It's not as important.
they're not as fragile. They're bound. You know, the paper inside is actually protected. So I would think it would be just something to consider.
Well, it sounds like, as far as the archives are concerned, the window work is important.
Yeah.
And it also sounds like,
But that's the public area, isn't it?
Windows.
The archives windows aren't.
oh, okay, it was some other,
Well, you know, the one that's in
In the
no,
storage.
that would be a new window. The one in the storage area, that big window, that's a new window.
oh, okay, so,
We don't
But
have-
they're not, they're new 10 years ago new.
Yeah.
yeah, but they're actual double pane,
I think so.
not leaky windows.
I think so. Yeah.
You know, I'm trying to think, the other thing that's probably, maybe was affecting archive space for a while, probably is reversing, is the introduction of more technology into archives, and sometimes technology meant machines that heated up. I mean, think of the big desktop computers, now we're going down to tablets, or just even any of the other, you know, copiers and things. And I think we've turned the corner on that, and I think devices are getting more efficient, getting smaller, throwing off less heat. So whether it was just for staff itself working in archives or for public using, you know, systems in the archives, but I think, because I'm trying to think of a longer time frame, and saying, well, design things flexibly. So a lot of times when you think in the future, you think, what is the technology going to look like? And then what form will that take? And then I think, how much heat is that technology going to throw off? And I think it's less of an issue now.
The people will still throw off 60 watts each.
People, we can't change, their people are not getting more efficient, you know. But their tools
Unless
are.
there's some real innovation.
Yeah, I guess I want to think that I may be jumping the gun and saying addition to the building, but I think we're there, that we've got to start planning, because the last time it took
Yeah, a long time.
8 years, maybe?
Longer than that. yeah.
Longer than that, 10 years. So we've got to start planning.
So in terms of the long-range plan, it was interesting to hear that when they said, oh, things won't pay off, they were talking about payoff within 5 years, which is very
It's really
short-sighted. Very short-sighted.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm for doing something drastic, but you can't, when the air conditioner basically is going to work for at least another 10 years, it sounds like, and that's where the big costs are. But thinking long-term in terms of when the air conditioning unit starts to go.
Well, and heat too. I mean, it's the boilers both.
Right, no, but I mean, the boilers, the thing is, you can't switch to a whole new system. It's way too expensive when you've got air conditioners that are going to work for another 10 years. But replacing the boilers is not all that expensive, and you can do that and sort of save the big changes for when the air conditioner has to be replaced. It's much more costly.
So
But I think that there should be some way of doing a rational economic time frame rather than this short-term five-year perspective. And again, looking down the road, one could make a big public presentation about asking for donors for an energy efficient demonstration project, that sort of thing, because at ordinary interest rates, it's more like 20 years is is justifiable, not 5 years.
Celeste, what is your time frame in terms of approval from the board, request for them to write up specifications for it to go out? How long would we anticipate it would take for us to get bids? What's it going to take, and how soon do we have to get on it?
Can I ask a question first? We're going to get some more information from them on some of these individual points, or is this pretty much takes care of the information we need? Do you need anything else from him, or do we need anything else from?
I feel pretty confident that the boiler needs to be replaced, the one boiler. So one way to move ahead with that would be to find out from Henneman, what will it cost to hire them to do the next step for us? So some drawing is included, some specifications are included in what we were paying them for this look-see, but not a full, I don't think of the full specs and the full thing you talked about. So what we need to know is if you were to choose to go to the next step and commit money, which is more than $10,000, obviously, so that's going to be a board decision, what will it cost for them to take it to the next step? And so then you can approve moving ahead when you have a better feeling for, yes, we're going to get the 2 boilers, we're going to move ahead, and we want to maybe explore the archives a little bit more and see more about that. And then what would it take for the control system? That's a piece you don't have.
Yeah, he kept saying, well, we could look into that, and then he'd scribble some notes, and I wondered whether that meant he's coming back with some more stuff, or this was just notes that he's making.
Was that part of this initial contract? Or for him to look into things, do we have to pay extra?
We're going to give him a call and see.
Okay.
All right, that's good. And then he also brought up the bearing that might be going. That was,
so that's the 1 to 2 year thing he said, and that's the piece we knew about when Kathy wrote that grant application 2 years back. She asked for the replacement of the fan in the air handler,
Right.
And then the boiler, and that's what was coming in under $250,000.
Sure.
Replacing the whole air handler unit is what he was saying is $484 something. So that's why it was so much higher, because the need that was seen as immediate for that was the bearings in the fan.
Apparently the bearing's been like that for quite some time.
Right.
I found out, I have some historic things today, talking with Dan, who came to visit me today about something completely different, but I started picking his brain. And he said that it was like that for a while, but the money went just some other direction. So.
One other thing that disturbed me a little bit was the fact that no mention was made of the second boiler in the report. And it was Dan who said, well, wait a minute, there is a redundant boiler, and I was a little confused why that wasn't mentioned or brought into the whole discussion. So even if we didn't quite scope the contract for that, I think everything else was detailed, pictures, which I found very helpful, but I think just as part of it, there would have been some mention of, oh, by the way, there is a redundant boiler. And so then I also wanted to say 3 cheers for our library best practices of paying the money for the ongoing maintenance of the system, because I think it's certainly paid back from what we heard from the report for our efficiencies, how well things have been running despite their age, and just so I think it's been great, the service we're getting from Davis and Hoke and Dan.
And I value the fact he came tonight to share with us too. That was great,
yeah.
So just in terms of the sort of next communication with them, Jeff's point about, since there is a redundant boiler, maybe it would be more cost effective not to do the 2 modular one, but just have a somewhat larger one. Just, they talked about that as another reasonable possibility.
So what we need to find out is what they wrote down, what we wrote down,
right,
and then look at what options we want them to explore and cost out for us. Cost out and spec out, I guess.
Would you want a motion from us to proceed with request so that we could vote on it the next time? I don't know.
I think it's a little too early. I think I'd like to see what happens if you make.
But we're going to have to make a request that they do some additional, and is that we're going to pay for that? 2?
As long as it's under $10,000 to pay
How
them
much
this
was
extra.
this?
Yeah, that's just, then it's, we-
13.5 or 11.4, those are two numbers that are in my mind right now.
for this full thing.
So it's just over $10,000.
So we have to approve.
If it's,
Well, we've already approved that 13 or
Right.
whatever it
Right,
is.
right.
so if anything additional was going to be over
Over,
that
okay.
amount, and I'm guessing the additional we'd be asking for,
The design, actually, because I mean, they're still speccing it right now, and I assume they still have a little bit built in where they can finish up and give us answers and stuff. But as far as the design goes, it will cost some amount.
Let's go on that assumption, don't ask.
Well, there was some design written into what they haven't completed yet. But there is some, it's.
if they have some deliverables still.
Right, and that is
Yes.
not completed, but in part, why would they spec out two when we want one? We just want one big one anyways. So in part, it would develop around the conversation that we're having.
Have you got enough to talk with them? I think Jeff's idea of one big one is, and progressively move towards.
Just wait.
Okay, so I'm not casting aspersions on anyone, but oftentimes people come in, well, you need that one out of there.
Yeah.
You got to replace it with two. And I'm not concerned about putting two in, but just that, do you have to buy two right up front? So my
Yes.
question was,
Yes.
you have a 1 and a 2, can you put a number 3, a new one, get rid of your first one, and then just keep that number 2 one connected to it, and then later on, a year later even, put in another one of these modular things and get rid of this number 2, rather than put both of them in at once and still have this number 2 sitting in the corner, like as a backup. And all it is staging the purchase, not that I don't think it would be cool to have them all. And then further down the road, you're talking about maybe expanding the building. So could you make these bigger to begin with? So the first one that you bought, get a bigger unit, then when you do the next one, you get one to match that. And before you know it, you've got 3 bigger units to replace the whole thing. But they were talking a little bit of cross purposes there, so. Especially it is kind of unnerving that they didn't know that the other boiler was there and that it actually is part of that it runs. Because I thought from their thing that it was just sitting in the corner in case.
Yeah, it's more confused, or maybe they knew it was there, but then somehow they're,
Well, and then that efficiency tag, like that was pretty
Yeah.
dramatically
Yeah.
different too.
Yeah. Yeah, because 93% is really modern, highly efficient.
It is what the tag says.
Yeah, right.
It's
So
what
you-
the tag says.
so they're just going by the tag, which is all they had to go by,
Yeah.
but then someone who's been
Maybe that's just
maintaining
the
it for
nature
a
of
while.
what they're giving you to begin with.
Exactly,
If
yeah,
you're
and
gonna
they-
get into it deeper, those are the kind of things they'd have to refine and really
Just talking
stand
about
out.
the burner being 93% efficient.
Burner should be 100% efficient, but
You've got what you need to proceed with them, and we won't do anything tonight.
We did not expect a vote tonight. What we expected was them to come in, give a presentation of what they've got, given feedback that we have given them. And then we knew that you would have different experience, more experience, and great feedback, and raise a lot of different questions so that they can go back, we can talk with them, clarify, and bring you something else. Now, if the boiler were to happen to fail right quick, which we are not anticipating in the
Special
next-
meeting.
Yeah, right, we
Yeah.
could have a special meeting and we would need to do that if it happens to fail and we couldn't get a part in the next month between now and.
Is there a junkyard like there is for cars where you could go get some parts?
I don't
yeah,
know.
eBay.
I know eBay.
That's
He said
basically-
eBay,
Yeah.
but I almost asked because it would seem to me that there are lots of
People
these
like we
things
are.
lying around, yeah.
So I would see that as emergency action, which sounds like it's possible, and
Yeah.
again, no guarantee of how long it would take to get shipped and all that. But then I have to think, right, again, how Dan, when we were talking about that as an option for maintaining, and he just said, please don't.
Right, right.
So-
In terms of a bag of
Right.
likely to fail parts, it probably would be cost effective, except Dan was worried that you could have a catastrophic failure of the
Well, and
main,
your bag
of the
could be
main,
full
of the
all
main
the
boiler,
wrong
in which
pieces
case,
also, so
yeah.
Isn't that, or you couldn't find the bag, that's what happened.
Well, no, I mean, the real problem with that was that you might just have a total failure of the
Right.
main boiler,
Yeah,
and so,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that's, so.
So the good news is that if you were to say at the September board meeting that we have a good plan, you like the way we're moving ahead, we have $125,000 pledged from the city, here's what everyone agrees should be the plan to move ahead, it could happen fairly quickly. So 4 to 6 weeks, I thought he said,
Yes,
to create the flu.
right.
And then, of course, in order to get to that place, though, you need to have an RFP.
Right.
They said that looking at the size of the job, it's not actually that big a job, that could happen fairly quickly. That you wouldn't need, for example, a 3-month bid period, that you could have a much shorter bid period, and they would have some type of, I'm not going to use the technical term because I can't remember, but it was almost like a meet and greet where you would put the RFP out there, then you have the meeting with interested parties, you talk it through with them so that they could write up a good bid, and then they would have them in within, I thought he said just a couple of weeks, that it's not that big a job and not that complicated a job for just the boiler and modular units, that people interested would turn it around quickly.
Does the city have any restriction on how long a bid must be out?
I have not looked into that part yet. So we would follow local and state laws, of course. But I would hope he wouldn't recommend not following. I mean, he should know what those are. And
Yeah.
we've got friends at the city, once we get the plan, we'll call them in.
Yeah,
So-
if we got an emergency
I mean, they've got
here.
experience. He was.
Well, if there's an emergency, it's a different situation anyways.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you have to keep cool. So it is possible that if things were to move quickly, that we could have it in this fall, depending on how warm it is, how late this year. It is possible.
But if you were to tune this correctly, and if you could, buy 1 unit rather than 2, say, you might be able to do the boiler and archives and still stay close to what the city's providing.
Again, we have to figure out, is there the grant money? Now, there's a whole nother kettle of fish. It's not even geothermal. There's this project, there's a whole concept of buying things in a different way, in which you work with a company and they help you find grants, and the money that you save in getting these grants helps to pay for the improvements that you put in.
ESCO is it?
They're coming to the city to talk about, we can grab the handout later and show you. But another company reached out to us, they work at the university, and again, they help facilitate grants and other life cycle savings on what you save in energy efficiency to help you pay for it, so you can see the savings and see where it comes through. So there's more than one company that does this project management style work. And so talking to there's a meeting tomorrow at the city about this with the one company. But even if the city wanted to go with them, or we did, you still have to get bids from that set of people to do the work you want, which we still have to determine what that work is. So funding, there are a couple different options. And we'll look and see if the Library Live and Learn grant is the same DCEO grant, because DCEO grant, what Kathy wrote was not 2 pages. It was a lot longer than 2
Yeah,
pages.
that's why.
I wasn't going to contradict him. We have sent him what we had done before, because that helped him look
Right.
through things. So,
Plus, there's also I don't want to say utility grants that we don't have any idea when they'll be in existence and how long they'll be there either.
so that could help if there's a window between, we really need these 3 things done, everybody thinks we should do these 3 things, and it's a $20,000 difference. We have been putting money aside for capital expenditures, so that would be one alternate. There is fundraising by the foundation and/or a new development professional, and there is, again, sizing the units for what we can afford, given all those factors. So a lot of juggling.
Yes. Thank you for what you're doing, Kathy.
It's a team.
That's nice, too.
Okay, let's move on with the agenda then. We have the report for the city council meeting, which is coming up 60 days after the end of the year, and it looks like that we're in pretty good shape with it, right?
Yes, I'll be giving it next week on Monday.
Any questions on it? Item 1?
With the change in that one word.
From up to
Okay,
by.
all right.
Yes.
just-
We don't have to approve this, do we? You're just making final report.
You have to, this is a draft. There are page numbers in there that say, in the report, which Kathy's finishing, there are a couple more tweaks to some statistics that are going to happen in the next couple days that will be ready for city council. And then you'll see what we gave the city council, but that is the text, except at the end where it talks about the garden, Anna is suggesting instead of saying a donation of Anna Merritt, it's a donation by Anna Merritt.
They didn't donate me. At least I hope not. I thought maybe there was a subtle message there.
Do we have butterflies out there yet?
Oh, yes, yes, yeah,
Have you?
monarch butterflies.
Okay, because I've been seeing monarchs around my patio too, but I bet, yes.
Oh, yeah, I saw that, the donation. Yeah.
So, again, do you want a motion that we approve this?
Yes.
As
I
a
mean,
draft?
just as a draft with the change that we mentioned being putting in the right page numbers from the
Page
report.
numbers.
And then changing the word of to by at the end.
By. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda, the
So
draft
moved.
Report.
report? Second? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Very good. Hours of service. As you see, there isn't a whole lot of changes. We had this last time. Any questions?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Memorandum for the Friends.
I move approval.
Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, same sign. Now, we
You and I
need
will
to sign that.
Yeah, we've got these
Oh,
ready
we
to
got the
sign.
original there, okay.
Yes.
Did we not have a memorandum of understanding with the Friends before? Is this the first time?
We did not.
We did have
Yes.
one before, and this is a change.
We just
This
took out
here's-
a,
It's a small change.
Oh, it was, okay, I saw the strike-throughs, I didn't know if that was.
that's all, yeah. We did this last year, and
So we will
Just a
not
minor
charge them the
change.
credit card fees, and we will not charge the foundation the credit card fees because now the archives is fully using the credit card option, and it's not that much to us, but it can make a difference when the Friends don't bring in a lot every month. Some months they lost money, and that doesn't seem
Yeah,
Yeah.
fair.
fair.
Right, right. Doesn't seem fair.
There is $20,000 a year for the library. It doesn't make sense to ding them for the month they didn't have that. It's like that.
My Media Mall, is that comparable to the previous bill?
It's actually, the price, the base price for My Media Mall, which is ebook services, just went up. It used to be just under 10,000, and now
Okay.
it's just over 10,000, which is why it's coming to you.
Do I have a motion to approve the My Media Mall invoice?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, the invoice for the OCLC and IHLC, $13,000.
Move approval.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The Cincinnati Insurance Company, is that up from previous bill?
This is the same. This we talked about
It's the
last
same.
time.
Okay.
It was a 3-year bid, and when we looked through the minutes, we couldn't tell when you approved it, if you approved it for the year or if you approved it for the 3 years.
They call it
And it
contract.
seemed prudent to just bring it back to you, to say this is the same price
Okay, that's what we need
for
to do.
the major insurance. There are a couple of smaller parts of it, were, and those we just paid. But the 30,000 brought to your attention.
A motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, report of liaison.
Oh, wait, are we striking 11.1?
Yes.
Oh, okay, that's right. This is the one that we're striking earlier. Got it.
Friends?
I was not able to attend, but I think Celeste was there, and I understand they talked about the summer book sale, and that was about it. Am I correct?
We talked a little bit about the bed bug in the library and how we will work with the Friends as we learn more about looking at and how to look at books and see if there's a possible bed bug in the book, because they get a lot of donations. And we have not had any problems as far as bed bugs go. They occasionally get boxes of books that might have a dead mouse or roaches or other bugs.
May I please have your attention? The Urbana Free Library will close in 30 minutes.
Those-
Patrons who wish to apply for or renew library cards should come to the circulation desk in the next 15 minutes.
Those are handled appropriately, as in they are taken in bag dumpster and get out of here. And then we call in our pest control company to do a spray.
I must
When those
admit, I
go.
was rather grossed out at one of the first discussions of what they find in some of the boxes. that people bring in
Oh, I'm not
of donated
surprised.
books for the sale. It's
Not
just
surprised.
unbelievable to me that anybody would even, well, enough said.
I have one concern with the announcements of renewal for the Friends. They say go online or pay at the door. And surely there's other ways we could handle membership, right? Can they come to the desk and pay for the membership to the Friends?
The checkout desk?
Yes.
People bring them to Becky sometimes. They bring in that and bring it to the office, usually right around sale time.
Because I think it should have been more inclusive. I mean, not everybody wants to renew online, and this said renew online or pay at the door. And so I think it was lacking.
Okay, well, I can pass it along to the friends.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it is their flyer.
Mine's due, that's why I got an announcement. Foundation. As you know, they brought in 4 new members. They had their election. Foundation agreed to help find a development officer for 1 year because they felt like, am I right there? Because they felt like they were going to match what the city would do, and they were not.
Correct.
They were not going to go beyond that, as long as they're probably willing, but it's not going to be a blank check.
They pledged the 1 year, and
Yeah.
it's a, see how this goes, I believe, and see where
Do
their
you-
funds are.
Do you want to report anything at that time about, I don't know if that fits here or not, the search or the process?
I'm working with the CDHR department still.
Okay.
There's a lot to pull together, and it has been a hectic period of time, most recently. It's taken quite a bit of time, yes.
Could you please remind me, who is the new president? Who is replacing Larry?
Oh,
Bob Switzer. Oh. Bob Switzer.
yeah.
Right,
And
okay,
then
thank you.
Larry was unable to attend the final meeting of the fiscal year, and he's going to come in September at the next meeting, and we will thank him, and he will thank people. He's done really a great job, and so that'll be a nice.
He will be going off the next year, but I really think he was interested in doing it, and it would have been a shame to have passed over him. I think it was a good idea. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Heartland, Jeff, anything new?
So the Illinois State Library said they got part of this bridge budget that was approved at the beginning of the month. And so some of the grants that they were worried about, they'll be able to fund, but they still don't have any outlook on funding, the regular funding for the year. So everybody's still pretty stressed out. And Heartland has decided to move their DeCoin location further south.
Further south?
Further south to Coverdale, is that further south?
I'm not sure.
Well, so they got a sweet deal in one of these university, development center malls that wasn't being utilized, so they got a really good deal, and the DeCoin location has all sorts of problems with it. So, and they paid for one of these sophisticated studies of GPS and mapping and their routes, and so they know exactly how much it costs to go everywhere, and this will save them some money covering the state in a more efficient manner and stuff. So, and people are leaving, they're only hiring essential staff, and still sort of a little iffy.
Celeste, anything else you want to give to us?
I have a couple things, actually. Laura's got some, I'll let Laura go first because this is awesome and fun. This is cute.
So not all children can come to the library, not all parents can bring their children to the library. And so we decided to work with some of the child care centers, called all the child care centers in Urbana to see if they wanted to participate in the summer reading program. We just took our regular log that we were giving to kids and blew it up. And the daycares that wanted to participate, we brought it to them. And when they were finished, they either called us or they brought this in, and we gave every child in their classroom a book, a summer reading program book. And this has stickers on it, and it says thanks.
Oh, lovely, lovely.
And we gave out about a dozen, and we've only gotten 3 back, but the summer reading program isn't over yet. So, but it was a good way for those kids to participate, and it increased our numbers, and it made sure that these kids got a book that they could take home.
Very nice.
Which daycares did you get back?
Excuse me?
Which one, what were the daycares?
Children's Center Daycare that's right across the street, and Urbana Head Start. I took some over to Champaign Head Start too.
I'm glad.
They asked, and I said yes, and brought them over there.
Absolutely.
So hopefully we'll be getting some more back.
So
So
this-
go ahead. Well, our numbers are up over last year, and so it's going great guns. Kids are coming in to see the jellyfish, and
Are you also running the adult?
yes.
Are the numbers up or down there?
The numbers, I think, are about the same as no, they're up from last year. Our teen is about the same as last year, but the adult program is up from last year, so.
I've yet to read my book from last
I know,
year.
I've got one more to finish. Get my free book.
So if you haven't registered yet, you need to all register for summer reading and get your books in there and come get your free book, whether you have read it or not.
And it is nice to be able to tell the parents, now the kids aren't the only ones that get to read, you can read too, so, just good.
I've started it twice, I want you to know.
Must not be good.
No judging, no judging.
Um,
So a couple more things.
Yeah.
So the board, you don't have board stats in your packet. We're waiting on a couple of pieces of information. OCLC, we get some statistics from them, and they post their stats as late as the 10th. So Dawn said to let you know, sorry, but she literally doesn't have them to put forward. So as soon as we get those, we will go ahead and put them out for you to have. We'll probably send them mid-month whenever they arrive. You'll have the IPLAR and the finished annual report in next month's board packet as well. Again, when I get it, I can send it out to you, but it'll definitely be in the board packet for the record. One thing we noticed when we were looking at all the different ways we wanted to talk to staff about bed bugs and think about places where, thinking about pests, where did it touch in the library? What did we already have in place? And one thing we already have in place is a disaster plan that was approved by the board in 2007 and then updated with contact information in 2012. So reading through this document that the board approved, it's really, really, really procedural. It's when the building catches on fire, who do you call, what do you do? If there's a water damage issue, who do you call, what do you do? I'm really not sure why this came to the board for your approval. It is not policy. It is really procedural. It's not made public on our website because that's not something you do with disaster plans.
No.
So I would be happy to have people take a look at it, but we are updating the pest part of it because just some of the language need to be updated anyways, and we need to add a couple of extra pieces. But my question is, what do you need from us to say in confidence, you really don't need to be the ones to approve this? Like the tech plan, yes. Policies, yes. I don't really feel
It's not a policy.
it's not a policy.
Yeah, this is very, it's an operation.
It's an operational
It's an
manual.
operational manual, right?
So
I
again,
mean, we're all in favor of leaving the building in case of a fire, so.
good.
Okay, so,
Did I actually mention bed bugs?
Is that it could be that this should say approved by, differently, phrased differently, because this was actually part of the per capita requirement.
Yeah, I remember.
So it probably
wasn't
did come
required.
to you for that reason.
Yeah, you
Since
have
it
to
was part of the
approve
per capita.
Yeah, I'm
But
trying
it
to
wasn't as
remember.
a policy.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
not
right,
at all.
okay, right.
But it was part of our per capita requirement,
Right.
which is
Stay
why
that
it was
way,
presented to you. So this
That
may
makes sense.
just be, you could say it differently.
So, if, again, I am happy to send you all a copy, but I would like to move ahead. Other parts of it need to be revised as well. And, yeah, Beth is indicating perhaps we can move ahead, but I just want to make sure you don't mind
In
if we...
the,
No.
in the pest
Absolutely.
section, did it mention bed bugs?
It did not.
How about slugs?
But they weren't trendy in 2007, there were other things, so they just started trending
I
afterwards.
do have a concern in your updating of it as to your training for this, because I don't know, what are your plans, let's say specifically for bed bugs? Right now, what are you thinking about for training of staff?
Oh, we've already done training of staff, which we did before we talked to other libraries. And one of the things they do is have nice, concise documents that they developed for their staff that lay out what is a bed bug, what does it look like when it's in a book. And some libraries had significant problems. We found a bed bug and acted proactively. So we have talked with a number of libraries that have had smaller or bigger problems, and they've all been extremely generous and sent us information that they've got. So we have 4 things that we've asked all staff to read. And staff who are trained in circulation, in their normal training, are taught what to look for when they're looking at books anyway. So for example, if you're going to go shelve a book and it looks moldy, don't shelve the book. When you're checking things in, what do you look for anyway? So we were already looking for things that looked amiss. And what we've got is extra pieces about specifically what do bed bugs look like in their different phases, larval, egg, and adult. So again, talking to the Kalamazoo Public Library just Friday, they had another tip. If you're going to shelve books from the cart, don't hold them against your body. Because if there happened to be a bed bug in that book, and they have a problem at multiple locations, don't hold it against your body, hold them and then shelve them. So there are different kinds of tips that we will continue to learn and we will continue to disseminate to staff. But as part of orientation, all staff will learn how to identify what a bed bug looks like, as well as other types of bugs. And Anka learned about these, Spurlock has bug kits. So that if you see a bug that you want to have evaluated, it's got tweezers, it's got Ziploc baggies that are pre-labeled. Who are you? When did you find this? Where did you find this? So that it can be brought then to, let's say, Becky or me or Kathy, and the exterminator can be called for identification. So
And
tweezers, thank you, tweezers.
Yeah. And I do want to tell you that when Celeste called me, I called Phil Nixon, and those of you who are in Extension know, and Phil said right away, I can't identify it with picture, send it to me. And they had taken a picture, staff had taken a picture, which is just our saving grace, because Phil could not tell by looking at the picture. He blew it up in order to tell that it was a bed bug. So it's not an easy proposition for staff to learn what a bed bug looks like, because there are other bugs that look very similar.
Well, and actually, so there are similar bugs, and one of the tip sheets says, here are other bugs that look like bed bugs, and one is a German cockroach.
Oh, the little brown, yeah, the little
And they
brown
have a
ones.
little white belly though.
Yep.
And so someone found one of those in the building, brought it to us in a bag. We identified it and then had a pest control professional take a look at it and confirm that it was not a bed bug, but it did look, we did not look like a bed bug, but we did look like that.
It's okay.
And,
I've got the American
it's
ones
kind of
are
a post,
really big and nasty.
after it's over, look at it, did we do the right thing? Did we overreact? I mean, I don't think we overreacted because it was, you didn't know what the problem, you didn't know how the extent of the problem. But if the same thing happened and somebody found a bed bug again on a book cart or something, would you do the same thing?
So here's what we're doing now, is we are finishing up the evaluation of different proposals that came to us from the pest professionals. And there are many different ways one can move ahead. And one thing we're looking at is how do we monitor the level of single bed bug in the building. So there are little traps that you could put that would lure a bed bug in, and it gets caught like in a pitcher plant. You can pay $2,000 a quarter or once a year or whatever and have dogs come out and sniff your building. There are a number of things you can do. And there are things you can do to treat, for example, the book drops, so that if a bed bug came in a book, what would that happen? You can buy a heating unit so that if a book is discovered with a bed bug, you put it in a Ziploc baggie, you put it in the heating unit, and you bake it. And heat kills them. Chemicals may or may not, depending on...
Does a microwave?
It's just heat.
It's internal, so, and microwaves can cause problems for the items, I would assume. What I have been told, those that brings the temperature up, keeps it at temperature, and drops it down.
Okay.
And so a couple of libraries that have had significant problems, again, for a while we're baking everything. They have less circulation than we do. But we're able to get past the point where they had a problem, they no longer have a problem, and now they monitor, they have the dogs come out maybe twice a year, they have someone check their traps once a month, they're not finding any bed bugs. So we are on the, how do we continue to know that we don't have any problems? And we do have a couple of tubs in the loading dock still that are totally sealed up that the dog alerted on, and everyone's given us different ideas as to what we do. We're leaning towards one of these baking machines because no chemicals.
Yeah.
And he kills them. Without a doubt, he kills them. So that, I believe, this is the direction, one of the directions we're going to go. I don't think we overreacted.
May I please have your attention?
And I'm glad they
The Urbana Free Library will close in 15 minutes.
I think we
The
can say,
elevator will close in 10 minutes. Patrons who need the elevator and all groups in the auditorium or conference room should return to the first floor now.
And then Jeff had his hand up.
I think public relations wise, everything went wonderfully well. I guess I'm concerned about, I was here when the pesticide man came that does our building, and he wanted to use traps. Traps, Phil said, were not valid at all, that you'd have to put them out and they'd have to wander in and get them. They're sticky traps, so it really wasn't. So some of those things are just, the pesticide people are selling a service that they can't even verify that would be useful. So I was a little bit disturbed with him. He was doing his job. I don't deny that. But I think public relations-wise, Celeste did the right thing, and we got the right kind of notices in the paper, and so I think we are ahead of it. Jess?
So I've been sort of busy in all sorts of ways, and I might have missed it, but was there an article that ever came in the Gazette that said, this is where the bed bug was found? Or the last one I read, it was just, there was a bed bug, and you're left to think of how it would get around.
There was yes. There were many interviews.
But did it get in the paper that it was found in a book rather than on a person?
It was found on a staff desk in a staff area in the archives.
Yep.
And that was the one that was discovered.
They also reported.
Somewhere,
I
yeah.
do know a kid.
I think, didn't the News Gazette also report that the drug or the bed bug sniffing dogs were only alerted on the book return area?
That's the one particular bin, which was isolated, double, triple bagged, and then put on the loading dock with the dolly, so there was no way for stuff to get out.
So if the HVAC system for the archives went up dramatically and down, it would kill any bed bugs in there.
Extra $10,000 option.
Can I ask a quick question? My brother-in-law was in town and needed to come over here because the internet went down, and he witnessed a theft from the cash register at the coffee shop. Is that a common occurrence?
No.
Did we lose a bunch of money, or is that not something you can talk about? Or?
We do not believe we lost a bunch of money. Actually, it was one of the things on my list to find out before the meeting, and they count the drawer down twice a day. So I don't know what the dollar amount is, but that was on my list of things
He
to find
witnessed the
out.
whole thing. There was this fresh-faced, red-headed kid, and he walked, the minute the fellow left, he zoomed up there, got it.
Did that get reported? The witness?
I saw the police.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, somebody chased them. Was it a staff member? Somebody chased them down the street, apparently.
Yep. And he dropped money, which was recovered. So we tell staff not to do that, just for the record. Staff safety is our number one priority in cases such as that. The money is not the priority. And so that was...
Well, you're not supposed to shoot at somebody if you're running away from this stuff. I think
When did this happen? I missed
It was last week.
Tuesday, Wednesday, or Tuesday last week.
Yeah.
It was a busy week, so somewhere in the middle, yeah. But we locked the drawer. So we do our best. Cash is a place cash is a problem place in facilities. But it was unfortunate that happened. But a reminder that things like that can happen. And again, do not chase someone who is stealing a book or DVD or cash in the drawer, because you don't know. You don't know what could happen. So, but let's just say, I want to say that the administrative team really worked their butts off as a cohesive team, and we were all here many hours for 3 days, trying to pull everything together to make sure we had good information, to make good choices about our options. Do you call in people with dogs? Can you get them to come in from Chicago, Indianapolis? Do you just call someone out for treatment? It's a 50,000 square foot building. There were many different options, and we worked really hard as a team, so I just want to say, it's a great group of people that we have here, and I'm very proud to be their colleague.
You've done good.
Yeah, hear, hear, because your lives get disrupted.
Yes. Thank you all.
Does anybody have any other items they'd like to bring before the board at this time? If not, do I have?
If not,
If not,
Seeing no more
we
business.
stand.
we stand adjourned.